Another thing that I really also enjoyed, and this is one thing that I think we've discussed a lot on this show, is pretty much every actor in this movie has that "I've never seen a phone" kind of face.
They don't have iPad face. They don't have iPhone face.
God,
like where you're just like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Like you guys see? It was going around social media a couple of weeks ago where there was a picture of like Robert De Niro as a baby that came out, and people were saying, "Oh my God, he has iPad face."
No.
Like he looks like he knows what an iPad is. When he's a kid.
I haven't seen that.
It's funny seeing it because like what we mean. Like there are some
we
people
have
out
we
there.
have iPad face.
We do, because guess what? We're using so much technology right now to record this. But like there are some people that they just look like they are, no matter what time period you put them in, you're like, they look like, I believe that you've never seen an iPhone before.
And this cast, this cast has that.
They do. They don't look like they've seen an iPad or an iPhone before. No way. Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of The Holdovers. My name is Daniel and class is in session. And joining alongside me today, staying behind for the Christmas break, it's Shahbaz.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? You know, if I were to be stuck on Christmas break with you two fine gentlemen, I would love it. I would not be upset. I would not be upset about it at all.
Keeping us in suspense there, Shahbaz.
I wanted to subvert the audience's expectations.
I would be upset.
It'd be.
I know. See?
Oh, well, there you go.
I'd be upset.
That other lovely voice that you're hearing, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I hate being in detention with you guys. I'm transferring to another school.
Oh, wow. Damn.
But now if you get left behind, so the whole thing is like if you get left behind because your parents don't want you over the Christmas break.
I'm a drifter. I'm a hitchhiker, man.
Mm-hmm. But are you, in this scenario, are you not a student in the school?
You're a child, yeah.
Right now,
you're a child?
I choose to be a hitchhiker, so I don't have
be
to
a hitchhiker
deal
student.
with you two.
Oh, a student of the world.
I am a student
of the movie podcast.
Dude, I am the Kung Fu Kid. Like the legend continues.
Can someone check Anthony's air pressure in his room? Maybe it might be a little low.
I travel the world.
I think you time travel, man.
Can we
really?
Sorry, before we get into anything else, can we quickly talk about Anthony's message to you from last night, Daniel?
Yeah, so
we've been laughing about it all day, and I think
we have been laughing about it, and
show.
I think the town of where this film takes place in The Holdovers, it could be a place called Shining Falls. Anthony sent me a message last night. So full disclosure, this is the movie podcast. We like to have fun. We're going to get to our review of The Holdovers very, very soon. But yeah, Anthony sent me a message last night, and it was very funny because earlier in the day, I'm talking probably 12 hours.
8 a.m.
12 hours before he responded, I asked him, I'm like, hey man, where are you in Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which is a review that will be coming out very, very soon. And he's like, oh, I don't know, because we were watching another movie. We were at our theater. We were watching The Killer, which that review is also out right now. And then late on at night, I'm talking like 10 o'clock at night, like, well, it's not that late at night, but yeah, I asked him like 12 hours earlier. He just messages me, today you asked me what world I'm on. I'm on Shining Falls. And I'm just like, I'm just sitting there.
I was sitting beside you.
So I was like, okay, what could this possibly mean? And I'm watching a movie with Shay, and we're just like full zoned into the movie that we're watching.
Definitely zoned in.
I Googled it, and I'm like, I'm seeing like different people come up. I'm like, who could this be? A country artist? Could this be a song that Anthony really likes? And he's just like, this is his way of like wishing me well or saying goodnight or something like that. And then Shay looks over to me. He's like, do you think he means Mario Wonder? And I'm like, that makes a lot more sense.
Today you asked me what world I'm in. I'm in Shining Falls. It just sounds so poetic.
It does sound so poetic.
It's beautiful.
And then Anthony, I sent him like, is this a lyric of this person? He's like, no. Who's that? Don't talk to me again, man. And I think that just such a wonderful summary of who we are at the movie podcast. We like to have fun. We like to have fun with one another, and we like to talk about movies. And that's what we're here doing today. This is our review of The Holdovers, which is directed by Alexander Payne. The last few films that you may know him from are movies like Sideways, Nebraska, Downsizing, The Descendants. So there's a lot of films in his lineage that you may have watched already. So we're going to talk about that very, very soon. But you know what? There's lots of places that you can follow us to see all the other reviews that we have coming out that may be out already or coming your way. Like I said earlier in the show, before we got sidetracked a little bit with, our Shining Falls story. Probably not the last time it will come up on the movie podcast, because Shining Falls should be a state of mind, I think. And I just, it's something that's going to stay with us.
That's how I feel all the time.
But make sure you're following us at the Movie Podcast on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Letterboxd. And be honest, it takes a little while to get used to saying X. But make sure you're following us on there. Everything you need to know is in the show notes below, including how to watch this review on YouTube if you want to see our lovely faces, if you want to see us laugh at our own jokes and our banter, but also our Discord. So if you want to have some great conversations going, make sure you join us. We already have some great conversations going. And yeah, it's a great place to join and just talk movies, talk entertainment, whatever you're watching. I do want to direct your attention over to some incredible episodes that we have out right now, including our review for The Killer and for Spider-Man 2 on PS5. That's our spoiler-free review. We will be releasing a spoiler-filled discussion very, very soon, as well as some really cool interviews with people from the movie and TV world. There's lots of big films coming, and I really want to implore you, make sure you're following us on socials, because that's where you're going to see our giveaways, all of our interviews, and everything cool that we have coming up. Lots of great stuff coming up. The Holdovers stars Paul Giamatti, Divine Joy Randolph, and Dominic Sessa. It's going to be releasing in theaters in the United States by Focus Features on October 27th. That is this week. Next week, it will be available in Toronto and will release to expanding cities in the week following. Now, Alexander Payne is the director of this film. We've watched a bunch of his films before. The last film that we've watched of him, which was Shrinking, which is a film that I watched for the very first time this year, believe it or not. It was on TV. Have you guys seen Shrinking? Have you watched it?
Yeah, I saw it on TV last year or this year as well. Like, it was just on and I somehow got through it.
It's a very interesting one. I think. You know why? Because I think we were interviewing Hong Chow, who was also in that film.
Yes, she is.
And I was like, oh, we're going to be interviewing her. I'm going to watch this, and it was an interesting film. But nice way of saying it. But what I will say, what I think Alexander Payne does really well is writing human characters. And I would love, Shay, for you to give us your thoughts, kind of coming into The Holdovers and your first reactions to the film.
Yeah, I mean, when we saw the trailer for this movie, I got this sense of feeling like, oh, this is a very like indie film. You see movies like this kind of pop up often. Can they stick the landing? Because not all the time do they do. They sometimes maybe go too much for the aesthetic of that time period and kind of miss the story and the writing elements that kind of come with the characters. I'm so happy to report that The Holdovers really is this warm hug through time. You get all these different elements of the late 60s, early 70s, that transition period of that time. And you're seeing all that kind of happen, and it's really wonderful. It felt like hot cocoa on a Christmas day. There's just so much about it that is beautiful. And I think one of the things that always really works well in the movie is when you have actors that are relatively unknown, minus Paul Giamatti, you get performances that surprise you because you really don't know what to expect. There's nothing really holding you over, and no pun intended.
Hold on a second.
No pun intended. You get these amazing performances, but you really get transported through time because the way Alexander Payne has shot this film, it really does feel, from the opening title credits through at the very end of the film, you feel like this is a film right out of 1970, 1971. Like, it's really from that time period, all the way down to the audio, Daniel, you were mentioning. It was mixed in mono, I believe. So you get all those different vibes that really feel like they're from that time, but also the story alone, it's so wholesome. It's just, there's this level of, sorry, when I say wholesome, I mean like it's PG-13 wholesome, which is the movies that I think all three of us really grew up watching as a kid, where a movie would be, they would drop the F-bomb or a couple times, or they'd say shit, they'd say all these things, but it'd still be in that PG-13 realm. It really felt like it was that time period. The story is great. The acting is phenomenal. I think Dominic Sessa has a wonderful career ahead of him because he's just so immediately magnetic. You really want to gravitate towards this character. You really want to understand what is going on in this boy's life. And you can sort of kind of paint the picture on your own, but it's the way the story unfolds. It's subverting your expectations for a lot of things. The story really has taken the forefront of it all, and not only are the aesthetics working for the movie, but also just the feeling, the natural feeling in this movie as well.
So there's a couple things I want to touch on that you brought in before we get Anthony to jump in here. The story of this film, the premise is very simple, is that Paul Giamatti is a teacher at a private school or a prep school that is like obviously full of rich kids. And there's a couple kids, they call them the holdovers, who do not get that don't go home for the Christmas holidays for the 2 weeks, either because their parents are out of the country or their parents are busy, whatever excuse the parents give, these kids stay there.
Abandoned.
So they've been abandoned basically for the 2 weeks. But every year a teacher rotates of who's going to be taking on, that guardianship of those kids, who's going to be staying on campus with them. Very much reminiscent of Shay, what you and I were talking about. It's like that episode of Recess where like Spinelli has to go stay with Miss Finster for the weekend. Like we've seen like that trope before, where you're getting like the student and you're getting the teacher, and you're going to get them in an environment that is where they really have to learn about one another outside of the classroom.
And what's the one where Gus can't go to the field trip, and then the whole time the gang is trying to get his dad on the phone.
Contact his dad, exactly. There's another episode of Recess that very similar, and it's funny because there's a scene in this where it starts off with more kids at being the holdovers, and then it just turns out that the other kids are able to go off on their adventure, and Dominic Sessa is left there with Paul Giamatti's character. And they have such a wonderful chemistry with one another. But we're going to talk to that a little bit more. But I do want to mention, because you talked about the trailer, and what I loved so much about the trailer is that it felt very just like a throwback. Like this felt like, it sounds like you're watching a trailer on a cassette tape, on a VHS. There's a voiceover of that classic, like almost like 70s or 80s type voiceover that you would get on a film. The Holdovers felt like a movie that we grew up watching by like Gus Van Sant or any one of those like brilliant directors in the 90s or 80s working, because it just has that vibe to it, and you set it around Christmas and it brings a whole other flair to it. Anthony, please jump in. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the Holdovers.
Honestly, when we were driving to go watch this film, I said to you guys, I don't know about this movie. I just don't think I'll be able to connect with it. And within a minute of seeing the title cards, and it just took the title cards to get me hooked. And after that minute, just the way the story takes a few minutes just to showcase where it takes place, I knew that I was being transported into a different time period. And that's what this movie really does. It transports you back to that time period, the late 60s, early 70s. And I just felt like this must have been what it was like to watch movies back in that time period. Movies that they don't really have a huge franchise behind them. It's not some sort of huge action. It's like just real drama and comedy. And let's just tell this story. And this is the story that a lot of filmmakers want to have on the big screen. They want this type of story to kind of connect with their audience. And The Holdovers is definitely that movie. I think it's a story that you wouldn't expect to be endearing. It has a cozy element to it. It takes place during Christmas. These characters that you're surrounded with are not the most lovable people in the world, but you grow to love them, and you grow to care about where they go to until the end of that film, and you want to see them, be happy. And I think that's what this movie is all about. It really focuses on, it doesn't matter what creed you come from, what religion, what race. We all are human, and we're dealing with problems in our lives, and how we share that with others and how we can get past that. And I love the messaging behind this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think it works well for just the holiday time period. And I thought everyone who's part of this movie did a fantastic job. I think it's so well written. The acting, Paul is fantastic as this cranky teacher who hates being, I guess, what do they call a boarding school teacher, but has to deal with the people around him. He's very smart, very intellectual, but he's also
stickler.
He's very stickler, but he I think, like, from what I learned, I think he just hates teaching rich kids because of what you learn about his history. He's connected with the cafeteria manager played by Divine, and she's puts on a clinic. Her acting is perfect, and then we have Angus, who, first time being in a movie, because I was looking at his IMDb. This is his first performance, and he does such a great job surrounded by such great talent that he holds his ground in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the whole aesthetic to the movie. I think you were telling me, Daniel, that this movie was shot with the idea of, let's use equipment from the 70s. Let's just make it as original and as authentic as it could be. Alexander Payne recorded in mono, which is absolutely wild, and it really has I was looking at the aspect ratio for this is 1:851, very wide, standard, aspect ratio. But the way Alexander focuses on his subjects and brings you into this movie, there's not a lot of dead space around. You just feel like you're in this movie with these people, and they just feel larger than life. And even though it's not an IMAX shot, you just feel like, holy, I feel like I'm there. I feel that there's this warmth that it brings, that the camera kind of travels with the cast, and there's not a lot of that empty space or large scenic space that you would normally get in a film. I was really surprised with this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What's so surprising to me, and one of my favorite, reactions that I think you've ever had, Anthony, is when you were leaving the theater today, because we were talking about, this movie takes place in 1970, and you're just like, Alexander Payne made the snow look old. You know what I mean? Like, it made like the snow of that time look different. And I can't, like, you think about what movies can do and transport us. So much of what the Holdovers does transports you into that time period. And you don't have to have a big spectacle of a film. You don't have to have a big blockbuster of a movie to really transport you. You could have just the simplest of stories of having a student, a teacher, and a cafeteria lady being stuck, being the ones left behind at Christmas. And you could tell one of the best stories of the year. And the Holdovers was that for me. This was such an endearing story. It felt, just like you guys both said, just cozy. It felt warm and fuzzy watching it. Like, you just feel like this is a movie from another time period. And another one that came to mind from a couple years ago, Licorice Pizza, which also felt like that movie was made in its time period. It felt like that was a film that we would have had on cassette, or gone to Blockbuster and rented growing up, or would have been on TV all the time growing up. This is that new kind of classic for me, where you don't see it too often anymore, but whenever you do, it makes it all the more special. And The Holdovers is going to be that movie for me that I'm going to watch every November, December. It just has that new that vibe where it's like, I feel like and not that it's like repeating itself or it's doing what's been done before. It's not. It's just that you feel familiar. You feel so comfortable with a movie like this. And when it comes down to Paul Giamatti, who is just so damn good in this film, he really does give one of the best performances of the year, I would say. He's just so wonderful in everything that he's in. And you've seen it in all of his body of work. But his performance as, this teacher who is so, I think, just scared to live his life, but also hates that he has to, be part of a system that rewards people who are rich with no consequences. And he really is that last line of defense of just like, I'm going to teach these students. This is an all boys school. I don't care who your dad is. I don't care who your family lineage is. I want to instill a education into you, so that no matter what you do growing up in life, that you were educated and you're not just using your money to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Paul is really he's giving you a performance that it's Paul Giamatti, but there's something about it where it still feels very fresh. It still feels very unpredictable. Like, I could never tell, when is that, classic trope of the old, cold heart melt. And it happens so organically, and everything in this movie, just the way it occurs, it almost kind of, it takes what you're familiar with. You already know how a lot of these movies kind of go, but then it continues to elevate it with a lot of nuances that, writers have discovered throughout time and have been able to implement in movies of the more modern age. So this movie really feels like, yes, it's from that era, but it also still has this familiarity of like today's world where you're looking at it through a lens almost, and not just that you're being transported. It does a really good job of kind of doing both. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about this movie is it feels familiar, but it also feels like it's from that time period. Another thing that I really also enjoyed, and this is one thing that I think we've discussed a lot on this show, is pretty much every actor in this movie has that I've never seen a phone kind of face.
They don't have iPad face. They don't have iPhone face.
God.
You know, like where you're just like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Like do you guys see, it was going around social media a couple of weeks ago where there was a picture of like Robert De Niro as a baby that came out. And people were saying, "Oh my God, he has iPad face.
No.
Like he looks like he knows what an iPad is when he's a kid."
I haven't seen that.
It's funny seeing it because like you know what we mean. Like there are some
we
people
have
out
we
there.
have iPad face.
We do, because guess what? We're using so much technology right now to record this. But like there are some people that they just look like they are, no matter what time period you put them in, you're like, they look like, I believe that you've never seen an iPhone before.
And this this cast has that.
They do. They don't look like they've seen an iPad or an iPhone before. No way.
You look at somebody like Brady Hepner in this movie who plays Teddy Kuntz, and they were recently in a film that I also just watched, The Black Phone, which takes place around 1978. And I remember mentioning that to you guys that, we have two styles of filmmaking here, where a movie like The Black Phone, which is a modern film, and it does a really good job of showing you that time period of the 70s, and you believe that it's the 70s based on the performances, based on the way that it looks. And then you have a movie like this where this movie feels like it's from the 70s, like someone just dusted off an old laser disc and was like, here you go. I don't know why I said laser disc, like they're from the 80s or 90s.
Well, where are they from, by the way?
but they dusted off like something really old to kind of get us this film. And I think that's what's really fantastic about it, because yes, again, the cast is great, but not only that, you just have this look to it that it's just from that era, and you would have watched this in school. This would have been a holdover in class one day and watched this.
What's really funny too is that Dominic Sessa, who, as we were saying, this is his first role. I really hope he goes the trajectory of someone like Lucas Hedges, where Lucas Hedges just started showing up in all of these incredible dramas, and I'm like, this kid has it. He is so good in this film, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Best Actor nomination for Paul Giamatti, if we see supporting for Dominic Sessa, and for Divine Joy Randolph, because they all carry this film. And even though Paul is like the biggest name in it, it really is the trio, all of their stories that are intersecting with one another and really making you feel like these are real people. And I think that's what Alexander Payne has done so well, is that he created a narrative, he created a story that you believe that these are real people and you are feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah.
What I also really love about Paul Giamatti's performance in this film is that he has some of the best just descriptions for these kids.
Oh my
and
gosh.
He'll just offhandedly just throw them out. And I feel it's just indicative of the 70s, where teachers could just say whatever, and the kids were just like, yeah, whatever, cool.
They could punch students back then, I think.
I think
they could.
I feel like that's one thing that Alexander wanted to show, that teachers, they were strict, but they had like a certain demeanor.
There's no filter,
and there was no filter with them,
especially in a private school.
But like you would get like Paul Giamatti saying you hormonal vulgarians and you snarling misfits and you
cretins,
degenerates. And it's fitting, because I feel like that time period, it suited what was, that those kids, just because of the life they lived and the world they lived in at that moment. I don't think you can say that to kids now. Maybe you can call them rancid Philistines, and maybe they will probably say, I don't even know what you're saying, but
I don't know if you can. Like, listen, I'll ask my mom. She's HR for
don't expose her, man.
Like, can we say this thing? Can we say that? I also love that, they're a private school, so obviously they're going to say whatever they want. And a character like him, who's also history very focused, he teaches ancient civilizations and all of that. So he has like this repertoire of just references and languages that he'll always use. So it's like he's always going to be the smartest guy in the room. But it's nice when he's put on the back heel when it comes to these different characters, when he really starts to open up. But let's get to our final recommendations. Shahbaz, I'm going to get you to start us off.
We get a nice big thumbs up from me right here, so I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think this is that film that you're going to be watching every holiday season a couple times. It's a movie that you can kind of just leave on, prep around the house, do whatever you need to do. My only real major complaint, I think, and it's not even that major, is I think it could have been a little shorter. I think it could have maybe shaved off about 10 minutes from this film, and it would have just made it nice and lean. But other than that, man, it's fantastic. It's such a great time. I think it's really warm. It's a great hug. It's like a cozy blanket. We've said all the adjectives that we possibly can, but this is one that you should make the time out to go and see, especially with your family, because you're going to have a great time with them.
I love it. I'm right there with you. This is a watch it for me. I think that there are very few instances of seeing films like this, especially ones that are getting theatrical releases. If you love great stories, if you want to spend 2 hours with some great characters, celebrate the holidays, and just find a new Christmas classic, that's what The Holdovers is for me. I didn't expect it to love it as much as I did. The more I think about it, the more I'm really loving it. And it's a film that I'm so excited to watch again every year, but also show my family. It really is warm and fuzzy. It's such a great film, and the performances, these characters, and really the message of the movie is really what is staying with me most. So definitely make the time for it. And it just feels like a movie that if it's on TV one day, like I'm always just gonna like, oh, The Holdovers is on, I'm gonna stay there, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, it's great. Anthony, take us home.
Well, guys, take out the Christmas tree and put the ornaments, because it's a 3-for-3 watch it.
I wasn't sure where you were going with it.
So cringe and so awkward of me saying that. I don't
No,
know why
it wasn't
I
at
would say
all.
that.
Man.
I was just like, that's great.
Today you asked me what I would give this movie a rating, and what do you have to say, Anthony?
It's a Shining Falls, that's for sure. You know what's funny? The opening of this movie has some really glistening falls of water. It's a waterfall, but like it's just funny that
There were the Shining Falls.
No, this is a watch it. I like you guys said, it's cozy, it's warm. It's probably going to be one of those staples for a lot of people during the holiday seasons to put it on, because it's like you could put it on during Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, or even during Christmas. Even though it doesn't spend a lot of time during that period, like it doesn't really focus on we have to go find a Christmas tree or we have to go do this and that during Christmas. It's really grounded in the character stories. It just happens around this time. But I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the look and the feel, the performances. Paul, I think, is outstanding in this film. And I wish I could watch it again this winter. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll come out before Christmas. Hopefully it does.
I think it will.
Yeah, I have a feeling it will. Or you'll watch it in theaters again too. You mentioned to Anthony, which I think was a great call out, because we were talking about like Gus Van Sant, but like you mentioned, like even early like Wes Anderson, like, it had that vibe of like these characters, right?
There's a vibe in the way Alexander edits this movie, and it feels like early Wes Anderson before Wes Anderson became like, this is my art style that I'm going to try to continue and evolve. But this just has that feeling. Even when Paul is walking and running, he has almost like a comical vibe to him that you would normally see in like a Wes Anderson film. Just this guy feels like a cartoon character that's in real life.
It's so true. It's so true. 3-for-3 watches. What a weird watches. What a weird sentence to say. But yeah, 3-for-3. Go watch The Holdovers. It's going to be out in theaters on October 27th in the States. Next week, you'll be able to watch it in Toronto, and then weeks after, cities. From there, wherever you're going to watch it, let us know. Please write into the show, hello@themoviepodcast.ca. Join our Discord. Let us know what you thought of the film. If you're planning on watching it, what you're looking forward to. There are so many incredible shows and movies still coming out this year. And, we're approaching the end of the year. So it's wild to think that we've already had another just huge season of movies or coming upon us now with December, with everything coming. But again, this is the Movie Podcast. We're the best place for entertainment. So make sure you stay here. We have lots of reviews, lots of interviews, and just lots of amazing episodes coming your way. Follow us on all of our socials. Everything you need to know is in our show notes below. So just go check that out. We'll let that speak for itself. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.